is a dedicated scholar and an advocate for sustainability in human health practices within the society. Please, let's welcome Mr. Emmanuel Nnadi. Mr. Emmanuel, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Good afternoon, everybody. Like she earlier stated, I'm Emmanuel Nnadi, and I'll be here to talk about a particular topic regarding the SDG goals in regards to the third one, good health and well-being. So I would love to share my screen. I hope I can do that now.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, no problem. I think the network is a bit bad though, but I'll just continue. So basically, like she earlier stated, last week you guys were able to talk about the climate action, and this week it's okay to talk about the good health and well-being. That's try to relate this whole thing to how it's going to affect the human being and the environment. That's for good health. So basically today we're going to be focusing on health and the environment. So please, guys, if by any chance you don't get me or I'm too fast or you can't hear me due to network, please do well to just write it on the chat. I can see it and I'll probably just readjust a bit. Is that okay? Hello?
All right, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so basically, I'm going to, like I earlier stated, my topic here is health and the environment. So the impact of environmental pollution on human health, and obviously also be pointing out some of the solutions to these particular issues. So moving ahead, in my outline here, I'll be focusing on the introduction and some of the impact of noise pollution on. When I mention cardiovascular health, I mean basically cardio obviously refers to the heart, and the vascular means the vessels. So cardiovascular system is trying to tell you how the environment impacts the heart of a human being, obviously, and the vessels. Then on the other hand, I'm also going to be referring to respiratory system, which is basically from the nostrils down to the bronchi for gaseous exchange. That's for you to be able to breathe, I mean. So then I'll wrap it up with kind of talking about solutions, then we'll now conclude. Then obviously, if you have, okay, like she earlier stated, I think there's still a part for question and answer. So you can, by then you will now probably ask me any question you want. I want to share my video. Can you guys see me now? Okay, so moving ahead. So guys, I'm going to start by trying to define pollution. So pollution basically refers to an introduction or presence of pollutants in the environment. When I talk about pollutants, I mean harmful substances or harmful stuff that can normally disrupt the normal balance of the nature and can cause harm to the environment and to the human being. So obviously, it's important that we pay attention to all these things because most times these are the issues that we tend to just ignore, but they actually cause quite a lot on our well-being and our living. So basically, here I'm trying to point out that I'm trying to let you know the adverse effects of the environmental pollution on health. Obviously, that's how the impacts on the environment is going to affect health, then the public health impacts, the disease prevention, risk assessment and management, then sustainable development and individual empowerment. All these things are just good, going to point to how the environment is going to impact the human health. So moving further, this is basically an overview of what I earlier stated about the cardiovascular system. That's, I mean, the heart and the respiratory system. That's your breathing pattern and how the environment an unkept environment is going to affect them. So now, talking about, I don't know whether we, like I earlier stated about what pollution is. Obviously, there are so many various forms of pollution, but I'm just basically going to focus on the two aspects today. So it's going to basically be noise pollution and air pollution. So what's noise pollution? Noise pollution is basically an unwanted or excessive sound that can have effects on human health. So the common sources will be the traffic and the industrial activities and construction. That's all these cars are used to in our streets or in our major roads, and all these industries are used to make a lot of noise for production, and all these construction sites around us that make a lot of sound and produce a lot of sound. Most times we actually feel like these things are not really that important, or we shouldn't be concerned about them. But really, it's important because we are listening to it, and I mean we have ears and we're listening to it, and because the sound is actually a noise, because it's something we don't want, it has an effect on the on our health. So moving further, I'm going to try to explain the mechanism of noise related how the noise relates to the heart. So basically, over time, our body has a way of, our system has a way of trying to, how do I put this? Trying to accommodate things that they don't want. But over time, when it gets tired of doing that, it's going to get to a stage that it's going to be harmful to the human body. So when I say chronic exposure, I mean constant or continuous hearing, that continuous sound over and over and over again, and you are just neglecting it, thinking that it's just normal, like it's just normal sound that you hear every day, maybe car and industries and constructions like I earlier mentioned. So this chronic exposure to noise has been shown to trigger stress and response and the sympathetic nervous system. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that because of the noise, which comes every time over a long period of time, it's going to kind of stimulate in your body. It's going to make it's a form of stress. It's a form of stress to your body, because I mean it's something external and it's disturbing your body system. So it's stressful to your ear, it's stressful to your heart, and it's stressful to your entire nervous system. So how it's going to, when I say sympathetic nervous system, I mean what I mean by that is just those pathways in the body that kind of transmit sounds, transmit charges, but that's not what we're talking about here. So because of all this stress, well, remember, whenever you're stressed, for instance, if you do a strenuous activity, or maybe if the environment has if you've been walking on the road and the sun is beating you, or even from normal, just for you to read and understand something, it's stress, it's energy. Stress is all about you burning your energy, and it's depreciating is just a stress. So over time, because of that stress, it's going to lead to increase in blood pressure and heart rate. Obviously, we know what blood pressure means. It's basically the pressure in the vascular, in your vessel, that's in the blood vessel, that I mean the artery and the vein and the rest of them. When the pressure of the blood flow is too much, or is more than it should, that's basically blood pressure. Then heart rate, you know what it means, the rate at which the heart pumps to push out blood to the body that it needs. So all these things is going to, and once it increases, now remember, our body wants a normal environment. So when it's increasing, it's bad for the body. And whether you like it or not, noise is actually one of the very, very important factors that used to increase our blood pressure and the heart rate. So, and apart from that, I also mentioned here that noise can also disrupt our sleeping pattern, leading to sleep deprivation. I mean, that one, it's not something that you don't know already. Some of us can, me personally, I know I can't sleep in a noisy environment. So, and you require rest for you to relax, even for your brain to be able to calm down and do better next time. Even the brain needs a rest, minimum of at least 7 to 8 hours. So I know you mean, like, I mean, if there is noise, you won't be able to achieve that. Even if you sleep, you won't be able to sleep for that long. So it's actually one of the things that I decided to mention here. So sorry, moving further, like I earlier mentioned, when we talk about increased blood pressure, we're talking about you'll be at risk of hypertension and some cardiovascular diseases. So hello guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't want it to look like I'm just talking to myself. So okay, so moving further here, like I earlier said, when you talk about blood pressure, increased blood pressure, we're talking about hypertension. That's the person being at risk of hypertension. And obviously, when the pressure in the vessels are too high, remember they're still going to go to the heart for recirculation to happen. It's going to lead to one or two cardiovascular diseases. I've already explained what cardiovascular system is all about. So diseases, I'm just talking about anomalies. Things might start going wrong in the heart or in the vessels, which we don't want. But that's not what we're talking about here. So I'm just trying to relate to you what's the fact that the environment which brought in the stress, what's happening to your body by it being able to cause that increased blood pressure because of the stress. So that's basically where and also remember the sleep deprivation. And I'm mentioning the mental health effects of all these things. Here I'm talking about the fact that when the noise is too much, it becomes irritating. Apart from stopping you from sleeping, it becomes irritating. So, and obviously that's going to affect your mental health. So remember, we are trying to relate towards the SDG we're talking about in terms of good health and our well-being. So if we are able to correct all these things, it's obviously going to lead to our well-being. So moving further, I now tried to kind of list. I was now trying to kind of explain how this part I've been emphasizing on noise. So I wanted to kind of tell you guys how you'll be able to mitigate all these things. That's, I mean, preventive strategies. So obviously it's good that some like the roads, the cars, the construction sites, it's good that they are there because we need them. But there are ways that we'll be able to actually accommodate ourselves so we can be healthy and function properly in the environment. And obviously we still have all those factors still working for us because we need them for our daily activities. So when we talk about maybe urban planning and designs, I was trying to kind of point out the fact that maybe people living in industrialized areas should find a way to plan their environment in such a way that they will have a section where people live and a section where it's more or less working places. So it's that noise will be reduced, if not totally stopped. But let's just focus on reduced, because when it's reduced, then it's good for us. Then again, we say the use of noise barriers and soundproof techniques. Well, this is actually because I was thinking most of us will not really want to do this because, I mean, unless you're talking about using earpiece, which is another sound, which is also bad. So when I mention this, it's something that I will want to point out that it's actually important, but then you have to find a way to use a noise barrier that is efficient. You won't stay in a noisy environment and tell me you're using a noise barrier technique and you think you're safe. So it's worth mentioning that for you to be able to actually talk about noise barrier and soundproof techniques, it should be something as effective as even living far away from the place. So then obviously public awareness and education campaigns, this basically is just trying to point out that we should be able to educate ourselves and every other person that that noise pollution is bad, and we should be able to do some of all these things. So that's prevent noise to be able to stop or not get to increased blood pressure that will lead to hypertension and on sleep deprivation and mental health that I talked about earlier. So sorry, moving forward here, I now talked about air pollution and the rest of them. So basically, what's air pollution? It's the presence of harmful substances in the air resulting from unwanted sources. So sources of air pollution can be industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, indoor pollutants, and this type of air pollutant can be particular matters, nitrogen dioxide and ozones. Well, basically, what I was trying to mention here is where this air pollution come about from the exhaust of cars and from industries like I earlier mentioned. So these like the basics of everything. But moving further, the effect of this air pollution on the respiratory system. Remember, I've mentioned what respiratory system is all about. That's you being able to breathe. That's the whole process. So increased risk of respiratory infection and asthma exacerbation. So now you live in a place that you have an industry behind your house or close to your house, and they emit all these gaseous stuffs that go into the air and mix, and you still inhale them. I mean, I won't need to tell you that you're inhaling them, and whether you like it or not, your respiratory system should be sterile. It's meant to be sterile. So if any contamination comes in there, the body reacts very fast to it and fights it aggressively to remove it. But over time, it will continuously be like it will be coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. It's going to lead to infection. And I mean respiratory infection, because I mean the first day your body will fight it off because you have a strong immune system. The second day your body will fight it off. The third day your body will fight it off. But as time goes on, it's going to actually start causing problems for you, respiratory problems for you, which obviously I know we don't want that to happen. Then about asthma. We know that asthma, it's a form of, it's actually a condition. It's a medical condition where we see that the bronchi are like, normally you see the bronchi try to swell, so it starts swelling. In when I talk about bronchi, I mean there is the nose that you breathe in, and there's the trachea, then the bronchus, the bronchi going down up to the lungs for your circulatory system to be able to function properly. So in an asthmatic patient, what basically happens is that there is kind of swelling in this bronchi. When they swell up, they compress that lumen. They compress the bronchi, so you won't be able to breathe, or you will be barely able to breathe. So you see yourself gasping for air. So when you have that condition, obviously they have measures to keep that in check. But when you have these particles that you're inhaling every day and day from our environment, I mean, it's going to make the condition worse, which you should not. So that particular patient or the particular person is at risk of actually having an exacerbation. That's the asthma getting worse, even with probably inhalers and the rest of them, because inhalers are just to stabilize them and allow you to breathe. But once there is a trigger, because most times triggers can be cold weather, can be this particular air pollutants that we're talking about, like the nitric oxide and the ozones that we mentioned, and probably the gases from the exhaust of cars, which is bad. Then another thing that I also mentioned there was like development and progression of chronic respiratory disease. That's all these ones are basically still that respiratory infection that we talked about, which I already explained to you guys. So again, in children, I was like thinking obviously that environment, so it comprises of both children and adults, their lungs are obviously developing. So my lung capacity and a child's probably a 5-year-old lungs capacity will obviously be the same. So, and it needs time to develop. But with all these things coming in, you're going to make your lungs too occupied, too busy to be developing. It will now try to be fighting infection, and it's going to impair lungs development. That's for children that are growing, because I mean they are growing, so everything in them is also growing with them, even their lungs. So you're going to impair their lungs development because they are busy fighting the infection from what they inhale because of where they live. So moving further, I think I've actually talked about most of things here, where I say inflammation and oxidative stress in the airway. That's here, this particular statement. Let me just kind of summarize this slide here. We know when you breathe in these pollutants that we talked about, and it enters your body, remember it's going to require energy for you to fight it off. So that's where the stress comes in, because stress is obviously anything that will make you exhaust energy, like utilize energy in your body. Once it goes down, you're stressed, so you need to rest to replenish. So that's where the stress comes in. But for the inflammation, the body reacts in a funny way when infection comes in. I mean, it's going when there is an unwanted particle, or what we normally call antibodies in the body. What the body does is that it activates a whole lot of system, which we won't talk about here. And the aim of the system is actually to come to that particular site where the particle is, or the antibody is. It's going to find a way to engulf it and kill it inside, and then take it away from the system. And that engulfing, it needs inflammation for it to happen. When I mean inflammation, because it's going to send in so many hormones, cytokines, and interleukin-1 and 2, TNF, but those ones are not what we're talking about. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is that all those things that will come in that particular place to be able to kill that particular particle or antibody that came into your lungs or respiratory system is going to cause inflammation. So, and once there is inflammation and oxidative stress in the airway, remember, it's coming from the environment. It's not what we want. And remember, this is your body trying to fight what it got exposed to. So damage to lung tissues and impaired lung function have basically explained that. Increased susceptibility to respiratory infections have basically explained that. So what are the ways to kind of curb this, or the mitigation and prevention strategy? So we should find that I basically stated that strict regulations on industrial emissions and vehicle exhaust, promotion of clean energy sources, and reduced reliance on fossil fuel, indoor air quality improvement measures, that's purely ventilation and air purifiers, then public transportation and active commuting to reduce vehicle emissions. So basically all these things I mentioned here, I'm trying to just point out that you should be able to find a way, or we should be able to educate to the environment, educate to the people, that we have to be able to separate this particular area that is kind of polluted from where we are. And even as we do that, we should always find a way to, those people that work there, we should always find a way to improve their quality of life. When I mean improve their quality of life, I mean try to make sure that when they go there and breathe in all those things, they still come back and they're still taken care of, so that they won't be exposed to all this particular lungs infection, respiratory infection that we talked about earlier. So in an overall sense, when I say solution, I'm talking about for both the air pollution. I'm talking about that's from starting from the air pollution to the noise pollution that we've been talking about. So I kind of summarize it by saying that's solution to the both of them now. I summarize it by trying to explain that more research needs to be done to enhance our understanding of the subject, right? So we need to advocate for stricter environmental regulations and enforcement, promote sustainable practice and green technology, support public health initiatives and awareness campaign. So I believe that with our parts now and with everything we've been doing, we're actually on the right track to be able to fulfill all the SDG has been talking about, our own life, from both the good health and well-being to the climate actions and the rest of them. So we'll be able to actually be safe from our environment, even as we do well and live inside the environment. So conclusion, this basically this presentation has been able to show the noise pollution and has been linked to cardiovascular disease, including hypertension, abnormal heart function, and an increased risk of heart attacks, while also highlighting the link between air pollution and respiratory disease such as asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and even lung cancers. It is therefore important that we understand that these adverse effects will help raise awareness and implement measures to prevent disease and improve overall health. So I was kind of trying to summarize, and what I basically said here is everything that we've been saying since, and obviously how to make the environment safer for us to be able to do well in. So I'm going to right now allow the host to continue, and obviously I'm still here. So if you need any clarification or anything that you want me to highlight on or to elaborate on, I'm here and we'll talk about it and iron everything out. So thank you very much for the audience, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. We appreciate. Thank you for an enlightening and entertaining presentation, and for the clarification on this topic. To me, the key take home from all you have said is, noise pollution and air pollution are things that people really neglect. Constant exposure to noise pollution, a lot of people see it as, it's not just this one. I'll just do it for today, especially people that make use of earpiece all the time, increase the volume and all those things. So we're able to get the impact of all these things on our mental health, our cardiovascular system, and all. Thank you very much for the clarification. So we'll be moving over to the next part. I'll be calling on the second guest speaker in the person of Ms. Confidence Mesoma Obani. Confidence is a passionate young woman with a flair for health communications and journalism. Being a creative writer with excellence, her skill to contribute to global health station, Polygirls, wherein she's a co-founder. Polygirls is targeted at creating and improving awareness about the issues of female reproductive health, particularly the polycystic ovarian syndrome. Confidence is currently a final year student of Medical Laboratory Science, University of Nigeria, Enugu campus. She's a co-host of Labcast, a podcast that discusses priority topics concerning medical laboratory science, the editor-in-chief of the Biomedical Students Mentorship and Research Society, BIOSMAS, and a student member of AMRI, an awareness society for antimicrobial resistance. Being a growth enthusiast, she's a graduate of impact fellowships like the Millennium Fellowship and Teen and Youth in Leadership Fellowship, and she's a current fellow of Clinton Global Initiative University, founded by Bill Clinton in partnership with Vanderbilt University, Tennessee. She actively volunteers with some not-for-profit organizations and has received a number of academic, leadership, and writing awards, including a one-off scholarship in 2022. In her free time, she blogs and loves to interact with people. Please, let's welcome Ms. Confidence Mesoma Obani. She'll be talking to us on polycystic ovarian syndrome. PCOS is something that a lot of people does not know about, so she's here to enlighten us and clarify us on the topic. Please, let's welcome her. Ms. Confidence, are you there? Hello, Ms. Confidence. Hello, Miss Confidence. Miss Confidence, are you there?
Yes, good evening.
Oh, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. My network disconnected me for a while. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I don't know where you left off rather. I've been disconnected for like 3 minutes or so.
Okay, sorry about that. We just called upon you to come and take us on your presentation. I've been able to
All right,
introduce.
thank you. Okay, thank you, Sandra, for the introduction, even though I did not get to hear it. So I guess I would just go straight to sharing my slides. Just give me a second. I don't know why this is taking so long to load. Confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, yes, ma'am, we can see your screen.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you. I'm trying to navigate this Zoom. Didn't let me share the documents where I would have loved to, so that's why I'm directly sharing my screen. All right, okay, thank you for exercising patience, everybody. Like Sandra must have told you, I am Obani Confidence Summer, and I am a co-founder of Poly Girls, an organization that is targeted at increasing awareness about polycystic ovarian syndrome. That might be a strange term to some of us, or maybe a familiar one, but by the end of this presentation, I'm sure we'd have a thing or two to say about PCOS. But this presentation is not just going to be about PCOS, because when Sandra sent me the flyer, I decided to tailor my presentation to, suit the theme more. Healthy people, healthy planet, aligning goals for a resilient and sustainable future. That's what we'll be talking about. So, before I begin, I would like to thank the first guest speaker, Mr. Emmanuel Nadi, for that very wonderful presentation. And I'll be building on what he has said so far. So, if you listen closely to his presentation, you will find out that there is an inextricable link between our health as humans and the health of our planet. While growing up in Nigeria, you might be familiar with the saying that they kill African man. It somehow implies that the African environment does not affect us. But from what has been said so far, we see that that is such an untruth. So the first speaker spoke about how the environment affects our cardiovascular and respiratory health. But during the course of my presentation, I would show a link between our environment and the endocrine system as well. So I started this presentation. If you can see my slide, I started with a quote by Bobby McLeod, who says that when the earth is sick and polluted, human health is impossible. So to heal ourselves, we must heal our planet, and to heal our planet, we must heal ourselves. This might sound like it might sound like motivational quote, which some of us are not so inclined to. But when you iterate this quote line by line, you see that it is true and it plays out in our environment. So whether we accept it or not, our health is related to the health of our environment in a unique, dynamic, but complex way. So I believe the SDG advocates have had previous sessions where they probably discussed the other SDGs, and today the discussion is on SDG 3, which is good health. and well-being. So it is one thing to know the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's another thing to know what the targets are. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, right? But for each goal, there are targets. So these targets are what this SDG hopes to achieve. And then there are targets, there are also indicators which shows how close we are to achieving these SDGs. So when it comes to ensuring good health and well-being, the World Health Organization is looking at reducing the rate of maternal mortality, ending all preventable deaths under the age of 5, fighting communicable and infectious diseases. And the one that personally concerns me is granting universal access to sexual and reproductive health care, family planning, and education. But these targets, it's been stipulated by the WHO, by the World Health Organization. The truth is that it can only be achieved when we as individuals, the SDG advocates, the guest speakers, myself and Mr. Nnadi that you've invited, the panelists, everybody out there shows collective interest in global health and tries to think about how the environment affects us. You know, there used to be a saying which many of us might be familiar with, that ignorance is bliss. In Igbo, they would say, that means that what you don't know cannot kill you. But again, that is another untruth. Because take as an instance what the guest speaker has said, people that live close to industrial areas where there is pollution by fumes, by carbon monoxide, and a lot of the industrial products, just because they are not aware of the effect of that on their cardiovascular health, does not exempt them from coming down with cardiovascular diseases, right? So the same thing applies to other aspects of our health. Just because we are not aware of how the environment affects us, doesn't exempt us from the risk and potential harms that could befall us if the environment is, keeps getting deteriorated or degraded. So it's in the 21st century, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance has stopped being bliss. So if you're if you're used to saying that, I mean, it could be true in some cases, but when it concerns health and well-being, it is untrue. So if you're used to saying that, maybe you might want to reconsider. So I'll be taking polycystic ovarian syndrome as my case study to show that one, ignorance is not bliss, and two, the environment has effect on our health. So I would like to know in the chat box how many of us know what polycystic ovarian syndrome is. Okay, maybe not know what it is, but how many of us have heard of this condition? I would like to know. Please let me see you type something in the chat box. If you don't know, you can say you don't know. That's okay. If you know, you can say you know. Let's see. Okay. I can't really see what is going on in the chat box. So Sandra, please, if you're there, could you help me? Could you help read out what we have there? How many people know and how many people do not know on this call?
We have like 2 people that know, say they agree to know something about polycystic ovarian syndrome, and 1 person said he doesn't know anything about polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Sorry, I did not get that.
I said from the chat box, like 2 people know something about ovarian polycystic. Like 2 other persons that know nothing about polycystic ovarian.
All right. Thank you for that. So the audience we have right now is probably not a good number to show the weight of what we're about to discuss. So the organization I talked about, Pili Girls, we ran a survey earlier last year rather, in January. We shared questionnaires to people in our immediate environment, right? Online questionnaires. And we found out that while a good number of women are conscious about the menstrual cycle, menstrual health, and all of that, not so many people are aware of this condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Now you're wondering, waiting concern me, why is it necessary that I know? I am aware that there are people that are not women on the call. They might equally be wondering, what is our business with polycystic ovarian syndrome? I mean, ovarian already gives it out that it is a thing for women. But how does it concern all of us? How does it concern global health? That's what we'll be discussing. So it might interest you to know that polycystic ovarian syndrome affects 1 out of every 10 women in the world. This means that 1% of all the women in the world have polycystic ovarian syndrome. By extension, this means that if we have up to 10 women in this call, 1 of us would have polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? A condition that is this common, you will be surprised that the awareness is so little. So, like you can see in the slide, in the downward part of the slide, it says that the cause of the disorder is unknown, but genetics and, in capital letters, environmental factors have been found to contribute to the pathogenesis. So, although the exact cause of PCOS is not known, genetics and environmental factors contribute to the pathogenesis. Now, when we talk about the genetics of PCOS, research has found that 125 gene mutations are implicated in the pathophysiology of PCOS. That means the way PCOS presents in people, what is responsible. They are suspecting 125 gene mutations. Mutations are like changes in the way your gene works, and the gene are like, what is responsible for the characteristics that you display. So, what is the exact cause of these mutations? Why would these mutations occur? Why would these genetic changes happen in some people? While we are not sure what the exact causes might be, the role of environment cannot be denied. Take as an example, people that live in places where there are network masks, like MTN masks, or other forms of masks. I believe we know what masks are. Some people, due to the problem of accommodation, not having a lot of choices, they live directly under this mask or very close to this mask, and they don't understand the effect of radiations on the DNA. At the end of the day, we have a lot of mutations that not only might result to polycystic ovarian syndrome, but to a whole lot, an endless list of diseases. These days, you'll be hearing new disease conditions. If you're in the health and medical field, you will just be shocked, because we were not hearing of these things. Maybe they existed, but we didn't know about them 10, 20 years ago. But now there are a lot of diseases, and when you ask what is the cause, they say it is of unknown etiology. But when we look at it, when we look at it deep down, we see that the environment plays a role in some of these diseases. So the next slide, when we're going to talk about PCOS as a condition now. I already told you that 1 in 10 women worldwide have the condition. And if you think this is a foreign thing, it is an Oyibo sickness, you are wrong, because in our Niger, out of every 6 cases of infertility in women, 1 is due to PCOS. That is how distressing the condition is. Okay, so what are the markers of PCOS? We've said that PCOS has genetic and environmental factors. What are the markers? How do you know that you have PCOS or that you might have PCOS? The first thing is irregular periods. If you have a period that comes less than 9 times a year, you have something to be worried about. If you have hair growth on your chin and face as a woman, you might have something to be worried about. There is acne, and of course, the defining feature for some persons is the polycystic ovary. This is not a physical characteristic like the others here. For you to actually see the polycystic ovary, you have to go for an ultrasound or a pelvic examination. So your results will show that something is not okay with the ovaries, but not every woman with PCOS has polycystic ovaries. But if you notice a combination of the two of these signs in yourself, you might want to go and take a test, right, to know if you have PCOS. It's not a death sentence, but if you are aware of it earlier on, it will be easier for you to manage. So on the other hand, we have complications because PCOS, we've had infertility. Okay, why some of us might not be interested, why some people might not be interested in having children. PCOS has other complications that might affect everybody equally. So we have uterine cancer, that's cancer of the uterus. We have heart diseases, that's cardiovascular diseases. We have obesity. We have diabetes. We have high blood pressure. And we have miscarriage or premature sex. And of course, the chief of them is the infertility that we've been talking about. So when you look at this list of complications I have outlined, you will see that there are no funny symptoms. There are no funny conditions. This is not something you wish on your enemy. You don't even wish on your enemy to have this one of these or a combination of any of these. But yes, this is what women with PCOS present. Now, before we go to my concluding slide, I would like to mention some of the persons you might know, you might be familiar with, some celebrities that have come out to share their PCOS story. There is Victoria Beckham. I don't know if you know her. There's Victoria Beckham, the model. There is Emma Thompson. There is Kiki Palmer. Kiki Palmer, I think even if we don't know Victoria and Emma Thompson, we should know Kiki Palmer. If you watch Saturday Night Live, you would see that recently, sometime last year, she announced her pregnancy, right? There are many opinions about that pregnancy. I mean, Kiki Palmer is not married, and you know how it is received in the Nigerian context. When I saw the news in a Nigerian blog, there were a lot of opinions. I just scrolled and read, and some people were like, why are we celebrating? She's pregnant, this and that. But while that is not my concern, I went further to read, to follow the news, and I found out that Kiki Palmer has PCOS, and she found out her diagnosis as early as 19. So Kiki Palmer is not a health or medical person, but she suspected that she had PCOS when her acne exceeded puberty. You know that when you have acne in puberty, it is normal, no concern. So, you will get over it over time. But post-puberty, acne might become a cause for concern. So after puberty, she kept having this massive acne breakouts, and it was a cause for concern for her. And then she went on to read about things. That's why curiosity is very good. She went on to read about things that could make her have acne at that age, right? And she found PCOS. And when she read about PCOS, she saw that facial hairs, chin hair was also another feature, another big marker of PCOS. And that was what took her to the hospital. And she found out that she had PCOS. So when we even come to the Nigerian context, we have Maraji, the YouTuber, the comedian, the skit maker. I don't know how to properly describe her. But Maraji, the one that does, I'm sure we are familiar with her. She also has PCOS, and recently she has shared her story of how she has a child now, but it was a hellish experience for her. So PCOS is just one of the many conditions that is of unknown etiology. The cause is not known. And science suspects that these mutations could also be linked to environmental factors, right? Okay, let's leave the part of environmental degradation, what they can do to our DNA and our genes, and how they can result in this condition. Let's talk about the environmental factors that we can control. Things like our diet, things like what we expose ourselves to. These things also contribute to this condition. I mentioned that one of the complications of PCOS is obesity, right? Obesity is when your body mass is unhealthy when your body mass is unhealthy for you, which results in a lot of other complications. So diet is a contributing factor to obesity, right? When person is obese or at the risk of having the condition, they are usually advised to cut down on their diet and eat healthier. So that's also an environmental factor, which will in turn affect your health. So generally, our environment, our planet affects our health. So if our environment, if we have a healthy environment, we have the chance of living a healthier life. You might, I mentioned that PCOS is something that is very common amongst women. You might have the tendency to develop PCOS, but sometimes it is until you expose yourself to environmental triggers like unhealthy diet that this actually manifests. If you're in the medical field, you will know that some diseases are recessive. That means they don't really have their phenotypic expression. It's not so obvious until maybe something acts upon it. So the same thing is true in the case of conditions like PCOS. So you might have the defective genes that predispose you to PCOS, but the environment will now become a trigger for you to actually manifest phenotypically these irregular periods, hair growth on unusual places, acne, and ovaries in some persons. So I think so far so good. I've been able to draw a link between how the health of our environment can affect our own health as humans. So, but what is it? Are we headed for doom? Is there a solution? When Mr. Emmanuel Nandi was speaking, he talked about awareness as one of the key factors in ensuring a resilient and sustainable future, and I quite agree. Awareness is very important. There are many conditions that we have the defective gene for, but they don't manifest until we expose ourselves to environmental triggers like unhealthy diet, radiation, carbon emissions, industrial byproducts, and all of that. But how can we know what to avoid if nobody tells them? For the Christians, the Apostle Paul in Romans, I don't know the the specific quotation, but he says, how will they know if nobody tells them, right? So how will you know what to avoid to reduce the phenotypic expression of certain disease conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome, like the cardiovascular disorders that Mr. Emmanuel Nnamdi spoke about? The only way we can know is by being intentional. And intentionality starts by trying to become aware. So you don't just sit down in your house and say that disease, dirtiness, the environment, no, they kill an African man. The African man has defective genes that, trust me, the environment will trigger. So you don't sit at home and bask in that ignorance and think that it is bliss. Really, it is not. So by being aware, we learn to protect not just ourselves, but also our planet. And remember the quote by Mark Leonard that I showed earlier, which says that when we protect the health of our environment, we in turn protect ourselves. What do we protect ourselves from? From novel diseases, the ones triggered by environment, and the ones caused by mutations that result from environmental deterioration. So it is actually a thing of personal concern. It is a thing for us to reflect on. I have a question here. How can we contribute to global health outcomes and a healthier? It should be a healthier environment. So how can we contribute to global health outcomes and a healthier environment? This is a question that each and every one of us on this call would have to answer. I and the speaker before me have, I believe, successfully led you into knowing that there is an inextricable link between the environment, our planet, and our health. And we are SDG, you are SDG advocates. I'm also an SDG advocate. We don't leave these things to people outside to correct. Saving our planet, saving global health, I mean, it starts with us. That is why we are called advocates in the first place. So as advocates, you really have to introspect and think within you. In what ways can I contribute to, one, better health outcomes, better global health outcomes, and secondly, a healthier environment? Since I've seen that my environment affects my health, and just not just your own well-being, but also the well-being of those around you. I mean, in the case of antimicrobial resistance, when you get a resistant strain, you pass it on to people in the family, you pass it on to your friends, and that is how a whole community will become prone to the resistant strain of a particular microorganism. So do you it's something that is a matter of urgency and of personal concern, like I said. So conclusively, in order for us to achieve a resilient and sustainable future, we must each answer to how we can contribute to better global health outcomes and a healthier environment, and then align our goals in the direction of our answers. When you think about it, you'll be able to find your answer and how you can fit in the grand scheme of things. For myself, I found out that I can contribute to increasing awareness about polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? That is why Silly Girls was founded. Now, we've been doing a lot of things at Poly Girls to see that physically and online, to see that more women know about this condition. Because the more people know about certain conditions, the more they are, the more people know about a condition, the more they are inclined to find out the facts about themselves. The people that, when I did that poll earlier in the chat box, the people that say they don't know about polycystic ovarian syndrome, I am quite certain that you'll be motivated to look it up and even tell somebody, if you're not a woman, you would be motivated to tell your sister, your friends that, okay, have you heard of these conditions? Is your period regular? Do you have acne? Is there something we should be worried about? Because you don't want to watch your loved ones suffer the mental drudgery that comes with this condition that awareness can help either prevent or make easier to manage, right? So when I say make easier to manage, for instance, if you're a woman on the call, are you conscious of your menstrual cycle? Do you know how the menstrual cycle works? Because some people are saying, even in 2023, some women think that the menstrual cycle means that if I get my period on the 23rd of, okay, let me use today's date. If I get my period on the 3rd of June, it means I should expect my period on every 3rd of every month. It doesn't necessarily follow that way. I mean, that is why we have period trackers. Flow is an example of a period tracker that you can use free of charge to track your period. How will you even know if your period is irregular if you don't even track it, or if you don't have an idea how the normal function should be? And if you're a man on the call and you've been hearing me talk about polycystic ovarian syndrome, please do not think that it does not concern you. Because like they say, no man is an island. I'm sure we have sisters, we have friends, we have maybe spouses, we're going to have, even if we don't have these things now, these personalities now in our lives, we would have them in the future. You don't want to spend years watching your sister, watching your best friend, watching your wife suffer in misery because of a condition that could have been managed or that could have been prevented. So the burden of awareness lies on each of you SDG volunteers listening to me now. The burden lies on us. And after this, I really appreciate if you can take off time to think. If you've not found out a way to fit into the global scene, I want you to think about how you can contribute to ensuring that we have this sustainable future that we've been clamoring about. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Miss Confidence. I'm so wild at this presentation. Thank you for an eye-opening presentation. I mean, like, before this presentation, when I was about to introduce this topic, I can remember myself saying something about PCOS being a rare disorder. But from all you have said, I mean, a disorder that is found in 1 to 10 women, for a disorder that is found in 1 in 10 women, that is so huge. That is so huge. And also, the point that got me was when you said that if we're up to 10 women in this call, that we could have up to at least one of us having polycystic ovarian syndrome. That also got me. So this is a call to action, each and every one of us. I mean, even if you're not interested, there are other, infertility is just one, like one of the contradictions of PCOS. So even if you're not interested in having a child or in childbirth, there are other contradictions come with PCOS that I mean, you know that. So for us as SDG advocates to look out for our health, to also look out for ways that we can control global health issues. Thank you so much, Ms. Confidence. We have some questions, but I think that will be coming in our part 4 of the webinar. So the next part is I was able to pull out some common health-related questions that people have, and we have 2 panelists that will be taking us on this part. But the questions is not just for, they are not just for the panelists. It's just it's a question for everyone. Anyone that has the answer to the question, both the guest speakers can actually give us the answer. So we have 2 panelists. The first panelist is Chibuzo, Mr. Chibuzo Ndubisi. Mr. Chibuzo Ndubisi is a graduate of mechanical engineering from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Though his fundamental passion lie in the energy sector, his interests span multiple areas such as climate and sustainability, health and well-being, education, and more, all supported by the common theme of the Sustainable Development Goals. Chibuzo is an active member of YONGO, the official children and youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, where he has witnessed firsthand the widespread impact of environmental degradation of youth in driving meaningful change. He's also a member of the Young African Leaders Initiative, YALI Network. And he's an ONSA scholar and a Young Innovation Leaders Fellow, among others. Welcome, Mr. Chibuzo Ndubisi. Then we also have our second panelist in the person of Miss Asogwa Joy. Miss Asogwa Joy Chinonso is a final year student of pure and industrial chemistry. She has passion for creativity, and her love for creativity extends beyond her personal pursuits. She's a dedicated advocate for the Sustainable Development Goals, and she uses her skills and talents to make a difference in the world. Joy is also a lover of learning and is always excited to acquire new skills and knowledge. Welcome, Mrs. Joy Chinonso. So I'll be asking some questions that I was able to pull out together, some common health-related questions. And from my list, the first question I have here is, what are some of the less discussed ways in which poor environmental conditions could impact our health?
Okay, I think I can go first. Thank you very much, Sandra, for the introduction, and thank you to our wonderful guest speakers, Emmanuel and Confidence, for enlightening us this afternoon with these very cogent and important discussions. So, what are some of the less discussed ways in which poor environmental conditions could impact our health? Now, of course, we've all heard about the common ways in which our environment could impact our health. We've heard about airborne diseases, like cough and catarrh and more. We've also heard about waterborne diseases like cholera and dysentery and diarrhea. These are things that we've been familiar with since our junior secondary school days. But people don't talk a lot about so many other areas in which our environmental conditions could affect our health. One of those areas is what was discussed by Emmanuel during his presentation, which is noise pollution. Noise pollution does not, if noise pollution was addressed with as much importance as it should, then things will not be the way they are in many cities in Nigeria, including Lagos and Enugu, for instance, because noise affects our mental and cardiovascular health in ways that do not just have serious consequences, not just now, but also in the future. So besides noise pollution, of course, we have things like nutrient deficiency due to poor plant produce. which of course is caused by climate change. So, I mean, we are seeing the widespread impact of climate change, especially in the kind of rainfall that is occurring right now in this region. So these impacts could also spread to plant yield, and production. And when we are not able to obtain the right plants for food, we would have serious cases of nutrient deficiency and malnutrition, and this could reflect in many ways in our anatomy. And then, of course, there's the issue of skin cancer and other types of cancers due to ultraviolet rays caused by ozone layer depletion. And of course, the ozone layer is depleted due to the emission of certain kinds of gases like hydrochlorofluorocarbons and many other gases from different industrial processes and even domestic processes. So these things are not talked about so much, but they are very relevant because they are, of course, health issues that affect every single one of us. So the more we can raise awareness of these, parallel issues as SDG advocates, the better off we would be as a population. Yeah, thank you.
So much, Mr. Chinonso. Thank you very much. Before I go on, if you have any question for our guest speakers, you can actually drop in the comment section. I mean, questions related to what we have talked, general questions related to good health and well-being. You can actually drop them in the comment section so that at the end of this part, we can move over to the part where the guest speakers will have to answer those questions. So the second question I have says, what is the connection between nutrition and mental health? What are the connections between nutrition and mental health?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good day.
Okay. What, as you said, what is the connection between nutrition and mental health? Research has shown that there is a strong connection between nutrition and mental health. Our diet can directly affect the structure and function of our brains. It's not our brains that this thing can affect, which can ultimately impact our mood and well-being. Consuming a healthy and balanced diet that is rich in nutrients such as magnesium, iron, zinc, vitamin B6, vitamin B12 can promote positive mental health. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Chinonso, for the answer. If you have any other, if anyone has any other thing to contribute to what she have already said, you can speak.
Hello.
All right. Does anyone have something else to say?
Yeah. Can I just add something there?
All right.
Oh, okay. So can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted thank you for your answer, by the way. I just wanted to add that when you talk about the relationship between what we consume and our mental health, you also have to consider the fact that when you talk about mental health, you have to consider the psychological aspect of it as well, because our body, I mean the brain, and it's part of the body, and the brain needs like to be fed. So which means, and there are some things, how do I explain? There are some things that you like as a person and I wouldn't like. And what makes you not to like it is because your body is probably allergic to it, or you don't like it, maybe from previous experience, or you just don't like it. So if you consume things that you are not okay with, obviously it's going to affect your mental health. And in the sense, I mean your psychologically. So I just really wanted to point out the psychological aspect of the whole thing, not being able to actually consume something because you're not okay with it. Or maybe you're allergic to it as well. I don't know whether it made sense or whether I should.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you. The third question I have here is, why is it important for every young person, not just people in the medical field, to know about the relationship between our health and our environment?
All right, I think I can address this one as well. So, I mean, we would probably not be shocked to find out that the average Nigerian is either seriously uninformed or seriously misinformed when it comes to health issues, much less when it comes to the connections between health and our environment. I'll give you a very good example. In 2021, I came down with a very serious case of ulcer. And when I first opened up about it, or when the symptoms first started to show, almost everyone assumed that ulcer was being caused by hunger, that I wasn't eating enough food, I wasn't eating enough healthy food. And that was why I came down with an ulcer attack, And the truth of the matter was that at that time, I had this same belief. I mean, it was a very common belief that had existed since when I was a child. So I practically believed the same thing. It wasn't until I told my project supervisor that I had ulcer before I now found out what had really caused ulcer, and then he explained to me, of course, despite being a professor in the engineering department, he explained to me about how ulcer is caused by a bacteria called H. pylori, which enters the body through food or water that contains the bacterium. So the bottom line is, first of all, you do not need to be in the medical field, to know these things, because they have serious implications for every single one of us. Of course, this is something that is a very, how do I say it now? It's kind of a personal, or a personal issue of concern for me, because medical scientists and researchers do not spend their entire careers, looking for development, or should I say, making new discoveries in the field of medicine for people to just be living based on superstitious beliefs, or wrong ideas on how sicknesses come to be. So it's very important that people know about their health, and of course how their environmental circumstances, especially when it comes to issues of hygiene, personal hygiene and environmental hygiene, affect their health. And I should also add, which of course is not a surprise, that with the current financial situation in Nigeria, one preventable illness, just one, can mean the difference between somebody having money for food and somebody being absolutely broke, absolutely bankrupt with nothing in their account. People have spent tens of thousands of naira on diseases that they could have avoided in the first place if they had been more hygienic, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of naira. So these are things that affect all of us on a highly personal level. And the more we know about these things, the more every single one of us, not just doctors or nurses or pharmacists or medical lab scientists and so on, the more we get to know about these things and understand them on a deep level, the better we would be health-wise and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was able to get some questions from the comments section. I have like 2 questions from Ms. Confidence Obani. The first question is from Maria Ezine, and she's asking if irregular period is a sign of polycystic ovarian syndrome, and what about those people who have always had irregular menstruation from day one?
Okay, thank you, Maria, for the question. So if I got it correctly, she asked if irregular periods are a sign of polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? Okay, the answer to that is yes, but this does not mean that all cases of irregular periods are due to polycystic ovarian syndrome. The other things that can make periods to be irregular, it could be in pregnancy, the early stages of pregnancy, hormonal imbalances, endometriosis, infections due to bacteria and other microorganisms generally. So just because your period is irregular, or just because a person's period is irregular, does not necessarily mean that they have PCOS. That is not the sole diagnosis. But there is a catch. Irregular periods are always, should I say an omen, a bad omen? I don't know if I should put it that way. But when you have irregular periods, it's not something you should ignore. It's not something you should be comfortable with and say, oh, that's how it has always been. Just like I said during my presentation, just because you are not aware of the effect of that particular variable in your life does not mean that it is not doing something harmful to you. So if you know somebody that has irregular periods, it would be wise to advise them to go to a laboratory, or better still, to go to a doctor, a gynecologist most likely, and get these examinations. The gynecologist will order some laboratory tests and some radiological examinations, and then the underlying cause of the irregular menstruation can be pinpointed. But yes, not all cases of irregular periods are due to polycystic ovarian syndrome. But in all cases of irregular periods, there is an underlying health condition that should not be ignored. I don't know if that made any sense to you, Rita.
Was she able to answer your question? She said yes. All right, thank you very much.
I hope she was on the call while I spoke. Oh, okay, all right.
Yes, she was there. Thank you very much. The second question says, as an orthodox practitioner, what's your view on Ayurvedic medicine or other forms of naturopathic treatment? There seems to have been a standing between both fields. I don't know if you got the question.
No, your line was breaking at some point. Can you increase your volume?
Okay. The second question says, as an orthodox practitioner, what's your view on Ayurvedic medicine or other forms of naturopathic treatment? There seems to have been a long-standing between. Did you get the question?
That has.
What?
I didn't get the latter part of the question.
What's your view on Ayurvedic medicine or other forms of naturopathic treatments? There seems to have been a long-standing disconnect between both fields. Did you get it?
Okay. My view. Yes. That was a lot clearer now. Thank you, Sandra, for reading the question out. So I really appreciate the question because there was something I did not add in my bio because you said a short bio, obviously. So I'm somebody that is interested in inculcating herbal or traditional medicine into the whole global health system, because personally I come from a family of renowned traditional practitioners. And I don't mean to say that I'm the child of a Dibia or anything like that, because that's a very popular misconception. I just mean that I come from a family that believes so much in using herbs, shrubs, the natural things that we can find around us to relieve disease symptoms, and in some cases even cure diseases. So yeah, that is what I will be doing long term, beyond my undergraduate years. So my view, from what I've said, from this little thing I've said about myself, you obviously know that I have a positive opinion about naturopathic medicine, phytomedicine generally, when it comes to orthodox medicine. But I think that the problem is that most times phytomedicine, traditional medicine, herbal medicine, however you would like to address it, does not really have a standardization, right? People are cautious that there is no dosage, and in most cases, people are made to take other active ingredients that might not be relevant to their condition. Okay, I'm trying to say this in a very relatable way. Let's take, for instance, bitter leaf. Some people say that bitter leaf, traditionally, that you can take bitter leaf to bring down your blood sugar level, right? Now, why this might work, the problem with this is that bitter leaf, the bitter leaf has a lot of active ingredients in it. You might agree with me. So why you need that particular active ingredient that is responsible for lowering blood pressure the other ingredients in that bitter leaf might be counterproductive to your health. So if that's why extraction techniques and clinical trials are very important. So if we put more focus on standardizing naturopathic medicine, I feel like there would be an almost seamless synergy between traditional medicine and orthodox medicine. So yes, I really believe in, Ayurvedic herbs, natural medicine, and all of that. But the problem is standardization, like I said. So if more people are interested, like myself, into going into that field, I mean, there's already a lot going on in clinical trials. So if more people are interested in going into that aspect of medicine, we would have positive outcomes. Okay, Sandra, I think that's the most I would. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ms. Janet, I hope she was able to answer your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. I'm glad it was answered.
All right. We have come to the end of this section. I mean, the webinar was supposed to end by 4. I think we are right on time. Thank you all for those who made out time to join, and I hope you all learned something from what our speaker said. Like, ignorance is no longer a belief in the first century, so it's a action from everyone of us about our health. Whether you decide to be aware of these health issues or not, it doesn't stop you from coming down with those disorders. So we should, as SDG advocates, it's our duty, to look out for ways that we can, proffer solutions to global health issues and all that. So thank you all for joining in on today's webinar. And I hope you all had some at the end of this. Enjoy the rest of your time.
All right, bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Sandra, I would like to that if there is a group chat and any of the advocates would like to connect with me, I'm open to that.
Oh, all right, that would be so. All right.
All right. Thank you for the wonderful moderation. Please have a nice evening.
Yeah, thank you.
To all our speakers and panelists. Thank you. And the moderator as well. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.